I've officially gone full knowledge overload mode. I've packed my brain with so many random, fascinating, and slightly confusing facts that it might just overheat mid-video. From ancient cities and scientific paradoxes to weird psychological theories and mysterious disappearances, it's all here. I'm the useless guy, your slightly over-caffeinated fact finder, and here are, well, way too many facts. Gaelic football is an Irish field sport that looks a bit like someone blended soccer and rugby into one fast-moving game. Players can kick the ball, carry it, or even punch it through a goal or over a raised crossbar, which adds a neat layer of strategy. The modern rules were formalized in 1887, giving Ireland a sport tightly linked to its cultural identity. Rounders is a traditional bat and ball game from the United Kingdom and Ireland, and it works a little like watching an early blueprint of baseball. Two teams take turns batting a small leather ball and running around four posts to score. The game's documented history stretches back to Tudor England, and its structure strongly influenced the development of 19th century American baseball. Australian rules football is a high-energy contact sport played by two teams of 18 on a massive oval field, which can feel almost like playing on a cricket ground. The game began in 1859 in Melbourne and mixes kicking, leaping, and fast hand passes. Because of the field's size, players cover extraordinary distances, making endurance one of the sport's defining demands. A medieval Icelandic law code called Gragas included a striking rule. If a man wrote love poetry about another man's wife, the husband could kill him without facing legal punishment. In a society where poetry held real social weight, this wasn't treated as a romantic gesture, but as a direct insult. The rule reflects how honor shaped justice in 13th century Iceland. Jurlita is a copper sulfide mineral that forms in low-temperature hydrothermal veins, often appearing in the same environments as more common copper ores. It has a dark metallic look that makes it easy to confuse with halkasite, a closely related mineral. Mineralogists rely on precise measurements of its crystal structure to tell them apart, since their surface appearances can be nearly identical. The Käfigturm in Bern, Switzerland, included a built-in system of speaking tubes so people on different floors could communicate without climbing stairs. That's essentially a 15th century intercom, using narrow pipes to carry sound through the tower. The structure later served as a prison and city gate, and the tubes helped officials coordinate activity inside a surprisingly busy building. In the 16th century, military engineer Conrad Haas designed what is considered the world's first multi-stage rocket. His manuscript from 1555 describes rockets with stacked sections that detach during flight, a concept modern rocketry still uses. He even sketched stabilizing fins and fuel mixtures, showing an advanced understanding of propulsion long before space exploration existed as an idea. The Maya civilization used a base 20 number system, which feels unusual today compared to the base 10 most people learn in school. Their notation included a shell symbol for 0, one of the earliest recorded uses of the concept. Numbers were built with dots and bars stacked vertically, a layout that helped astronomers calculate calendars with remarkable precision. During the restoration of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, conservators used a delicate poultice made from solvent, gel, and thin Japanese paper to remove centuries of soot. The paper kept the mixture from spreading, while the gel gently lifted grime without disturbing Michelangelo's pigments. It was a slow, careful process, almost like unwrapping a fragile artifact 1 square inch at a time. A vampire number is a composite number that can be factored into two smaller integers, called fangs, which together use all the digits of the original number. For example, 126 equals 21 times 6, and the digits reappear in the factors. There's no mystical twist here, just a clever bit of recreational mathematics that plays with numerical rearrangements. Phase contrast microscopy lets scientists view transparent, unstained specimens like living cells by converting tiny phase shifts and passing light into differences in brightness. Invented by Fritz Zerneik in 1935, the method reveals details that would otherwise remain invisible, such as the internal edges of cell membranes. It works almost like turning faint whispers into clear audio without adding artificial coloring. Specific impulse is a measure of how efficiently a rocket engine uses its propellant, expressed as how long 1 unit of fuel can produce 1 unit of thrust. Higher values mean the engine can maintain thrust longer, which is crucial in space missions. It's similar to comparing fuel mileage in cars, except the distance is measured in seconds of sustained propulsion. Glycobiology studies the structure and function of carbohydrates, especially the complex sugar chains attached to proteins and lipids. These molecules help cells recognize one another, making them essential for immune responses and communication. It's a field where tiny structural changes, sometimes just one link in a chain, can alter how the body reacts, similar to how a single wrong note shifts an entire melody. Decimation was a severe Roman military punishment in which 1 out of every 10 soldiers in a disobedient cohort was executed by the others. The practice appears in accounts from the Republic and early Empire, and its purpose was to enforce discipline through shared responsibility. It was rare, but its reputation alone was enough to keep troops tightly controlled. Dendrochronology is the science of dating events and environmental changes by examining tree rings, which form annually with varying widths. A narrow ring might indicate a dry season, while a wide one marks good growth. By matching patterns across samples, researchers can create timelines stretching back thousands of years, helping date archaeological finds or reconstruct ancient climates. The ancient Hittite law code, compiled around the 17th century BCE, favored monetary compensation instead of physical retaliation for most offenses. Even cases involving significant injury were settled with payments measured in silver. This approach reflected a legal system focused on restoring balance rather than punishing through harm, a surprisingly pragmatic stance for a Bronze Age empire. Studies of the Shroud of Turin note that its faint image rests only on the top few microfibers of the linen threads. The coloration doesn't soak deeper into the cloth, giving it a surface-only appearance that researchers analyze with microscopes. This thin layer has fueled debates about how the image formed, since common pigments usually penetrate more deeply. Kalaripayattu, an ancient martial art from South India, is considered one of the world's oldest fighting systems, with roots stretching back over 2,000 years. Its training includes swift strikes, low kicks, and weapon forms using sticks and blades. Practitioners combine physical skill with controlled breathing, creating a style that feels almost like a moving meditation shaped by regional history. The word mortgage comes from Old French and literally translates to death pledge, a reference to how the agreement ends only when the debt is fully repaid or the borrower defaults. The term appears in medieval legal texts describing property transfers. It's a reminder that financial language often carries traces of older, more dramatic expressions from Europe's legal traditions. Steganography is the practice of hiding a message inside another non-secret medium, such as embedding information in the pixel values of an image. Unlike encryption, which openly scrambles content, steganography aims to conceal the message's existence entirely. Ancient examples include writing on wooden tablets and coating them with wax, a method that worked much like a digital file with layers. In measurement, an aliquot refers to a portion of a whole that accurately represents the larger sample, often used in chemistry. Taking an aliquot ensures that laboratory tests reflect the true composition of the mixture, much like tasting a spoonful of soup to judge the overall flavor. It allows scientists to analyze substances without working with the entire batch. The modern shipping container's standardized design was introduced by Malcolm McLean in the 1950s, transforming how goods moved around the world. Containers could be transferred directly between ships, trucks, and trains without unpacking, greatly reducing handling time. This simple improvement effectively stitched global trade together, making long-distance transport as routine as loading a suitcase. At the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, a smaller English force defeated a much larger French army with the help of longbows and muddy terrain. The English archers launched rapid volleys that disrupted French advances, while the soaked ground slowed heavily armored knights. Chroniclers noted that the battlefield conditions turned a potentially uneven fight into a tactical English victory. The Brachy-Stockhrone curve is the shape a frictionless object must follow to travel between 2 points in the shortest time under gravity. Johann Bernoulli solved the problem in 1696, showing the curve as a cycloid, similar to the path traced by a point on a rolling wheel. It feels counterintuitive because the fastest route isn't a straight line. The medieval Norse Gaelic kingdoms, such as the Kingdom of the Isles, formed when Viking settlers blended with Gaelic communities in the Hebrides and the Isle of Man. This mix shaped local language, art, and political structures. Rulers often had Norse names but governed lands using Gaelic customs, creating a hybrid culture that bridged Scandinavia and the British Isles. The ancient Library of Alexandria used pinakes, or catalog tablets, created by the scholar Callimachus to organize its enormous collection of scrolls. These lists recorded authors, works, and brief summaries, functioning like an early library catalog. In a place that held hundreds of thousands of texts, the Pinakes helped scholars navigate knowledge much as digital databases do today. A pentimento is the visible trace of an earlier image beneath layers of paint on a canvas, showing where an artist changed their mind during the creative process. As paint ages and becomes more transparent, older strokes reappear, revealing adjustments that might have been hidden for centuries. Art historians study pentimenti to understand how compositions evolved on the painter's easel. The Ritsuryo system in early Japan blended Confucian ideals with Chinese legalist structure, creating a centralized bureaucracy suited to local customs. It organized society into ranks, regulated land distribution, and defined official duties, much like a carefully arranged flowchart. Although borrowed from Tang China, it gradually shifted to fit Japan's political reality, especially as powerful clans began shaping governance. The medieval assize of bread and ale in England set strict rules for the price, weight, and quality of bread and beer sold to the public. Instead of letting bakers set their own standards, officials checked loaves and ales against published tables. If grain prices rose, allowable bread weight dropped, a bit like adjusting serving sizes to match supply. Violating the assize could lead to fines or punishment in the pillory. A Lazarus taxon refers to a species that disappears from the fossil record for an unusually long stretch, then reappears later as if returning from extinction. The coelacanth famously fits this pattern, with fossils vanishing after the Cretaceous, but a living specimen found in 1938. It highlights how incomplete the fossil record can be, since gaps may simply reflect conditions where fossils fail to form. The Potosi silver mines in Bolivia fueled a massive colonial economy in the 16th century, producing so much metal that it reshaped global currency circulation. Silver from the mountain traveled through Spanish mints and into European and Asian markets, causing inflation back in Spain. The scale of extraction was so large that it tied Andes labor systems to worldwide financial networks. A Mesopotamian kuduru was a carved stone boundary marker recording royal grants of land, complete with legal terms and divine symbols. These stones often warned potential violators through curses invoking major gods, a way of reinforcing property rights when enforcement was limited. Many kuduru survive with detailed inscriptions that help historians trace land ownership in Babylonian society. Building the Panama Canal required innovations such as enormous steam-powered shovels capable of cutting through dense rock and soil. Engineers also designed a 3-step lock system to lift ships over the Continental Divide, rather than digging a sea-level canal. The combination of machinery, medical advances, and precise surveying produced a route that permanently changed maritime travel. The term bug in computing became popular after engineers working on the Harvard Mark II found a moth caught inside a relay in 1947. They taped the insect into the logbook with a note calling it the first actual case of a bug being found. The word existed earlier in engineering slang, but the incident gave it a memorable, documented origin in computing history. The mathematical constant E serves as the base of natural logarithms and appears in equations describing continuous growth or decay. It shows up in compound interest, radioactive half-lives, and models of population change. Discovered through studies of logarithms and calculus in the 17th century, E behaves like a natural balancing point for processes that change smoothly over time. The geoid represents the shape the ocean would take under Earth's gravity and rotation alone, ignoring winds and tides. It isn't a perfect sphere or ellipsoid, but a gently lumpy surface that rises over areas of stronger gravity and dips over weaker regions. This invisible reference helps surveyors measure elevation accurately, especially when mapping mountains or sea levels. The idea of droit de seigneur, the supposed right of a medieval lord to spend the wedding night with a vassal's bride, is now widely viewed as a myth rather than a documented practice. References to it mostly appear in later literature and satire, not legal codes. Historians consider it a symbolic exaggeration of feudal power rather than an actual custom. Restoring old panel paintings often requires adding a cradle, a wooden grid attached to the back to keep the original board from warping. These supports allow the panel to expand and contract with humidity while staying flat enough to preserve the artwork. The technique became common in European conservation during the 19th century, especially for Renaissance works painted on wood. The Chimu culture of ancient South America crafted whistling pottery that produced sound when water was poured inside. As liquid moved through internal chambers, the vessel emitted bird-like or flute-like tones, turning a simple pour into a small performance. These ceramics, found along Peru's northern coast, reflect how the Chimu blended functional containers with acoustic design. The Mahabharata, an ancient Indian epic, stretches to roughly 10 times the combined length of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Composed over centuries, it weaves mythology, philosophy, and political drama into a vast narrative centered on the Kurukshetra War. Its 18 books contain discussions on duty, kingship, and morality, making it both a story and a guide to classical Indian thought. The Enshu style of Japanese martial arts, founded in the 17th century, pairs swordsmanship practice with ikebana, the art of flower arrangement. The combination seems unusual, but it reflects a philosophy of balancing martial precision with aesthetic refinement. Practitioners trained both the body and the sense of form, treating combat and artistry as complementary disciplines. Excavations at the ancient city of Gath, traditionally linked to the biblical figure Goliath, show evidence of a sophisticated Philistine culture with ties to the Aegean world. Pottery styles, architecture, and inscriptions reveal influences reminiscent of Greek regions. These finds support the idea that the Philistines were part of broader Mediterranean movements during the early Iron Age. The kingdom of Kush in Nubia conquered Egypt in the 8th century BCE, ruling as the 25th dynasty. Its pharaohs adopted Egyptian titles and religious traditions while maintaining distinct Kushite artistic features, such as tightly curled hair and unique crown shapes. Their reign revived temple building and contributed to a period of cultural exchange between the two regions. The Chinese philosopher Mozi, active in the 5th century BCE, was not only a moral thinker, but a practical engineer. His writings describe defensive strategies and designs for siege machines used to protect walled cities. Followers of his school even traveled to assist states under threat, applying his ideas as a blend of philosophy, logistics, and mechanics. Xanadu, the summer capital of Kublai Khan, combined Chinese architectural planning with elements inspired by Mongol nomadic life. Designed in the 13th century, the city included formal palaces alongside open areas suited to tented encampments. Its layout mirrored the dual identity of the Yuan dynasty, blending steppe traditions with established Chinese urban design. The medieval fabric known as cloth of gold was woven from silk threads wrapped in thin strands of real gold. Its shimmering surface made it suitable for coronations, diplomatic ceremonies, and garments listed among royal treasures. Because of its cost and craftsmanship, wearing cloth of gold signaled a level of prestige matched by few other textiles in medieval Europe. A Byzantine chain uses interlinked rings arranged in an intricate, rope-like pattern that feels both flexible and dense. The technique appears in historical armor and jewelry, where the design's tight weave provided durability and visual complexity. Modern jewelers still use the method, appreciating how its repeating loops create a texture that seems almost braided from metal. The Permian-Triassic extinction event occurred about 252 million years ago and wiped out a vast majority of Earth's species. Geological layers show sharp declines in marine life and major shifts in climate and volcanic activity. Because so many ecosystems collapsed, scientists refer to it as the Great Dying, the most severe mass extinction known in Earth's history. The ancient city of Taxila, in what is now Pakistan, served as a major center of learning for centuries. Students from regions such as Greece and Persia came to study subjects ranging from medicine to political theory. Archaeological remains of monasteries and lecture halls reflect its role as a crossroads of ideas during the early classical period. The Hittites were among the earliest civilizations to master ironworking, giving them a technological advantage in tools and weapons near the end of the Bronze Age. Their ability to heat and shape iron allowed for stronger blades and durable farming implements. This skill helped the Hittite Empire expand its influence across Anatolia and the northern Levant. Susa, located in modern Iran, was one of the principal capitals of the Achaemenid Empire and appears prominently in the Book of Esther. Archaeological finds include palace complexes, administrative tablets, and glazed brick reliefs. Its long occupation history made it a political and cultural hub linking Mesopotamian, Persian, and Elamite traditions. The Tarim mummies of Western China were buried in the dry sands of the Tarim Basin, with clothing woven in patterns that look surprisingly similar to early European textiles. Many have naturally preserved red or blonde hair and facial features associated with ancient Caucasoid groups. Their tools and woven fabrics show how far-reaching cultural exchanges were along early Inner Asian routes. The ancient Greek city of Syracuse in Sicily was home to Archimedes, whose experiments shaped early mathematics and engineering. The city also featured a massive altar nearly 200 meters long, built for public sacrifices during festivals. Its scale matched Syracuse's importance as a Mediterranean power, where religion, politics, and scientific thought intersected in daily civic life. Gonur-Tepe in modern Turkmenistan served as a major center of the Bronze Age Oxus civilization, with a large palace complex, temples, and carefully engineered irrigation channels. These systems carried river water across the desert, supporting a city laid out with planned streets. Excavations reveal workshops, ritual spaces, and fortifications that reflect a thriving and organized urban society. The Ballistic Missile Early Warning System, or BMEWS, was built during the Cold War to detect potential Soviet missile launches. Its large radar stations were placed across Arctic regions, stretching from Alaska to Greenland. Designed to track objects rising over the horizon, the network acted like an early warning shield, giving the United States and allies precious minutes to respond. England's medieval forest laws restricted hunting and protected game animals and woodland reserved for the king. Even gathering fallen wood could result in punishment, since access to royal forests was tightly controlled. These regulations turned large tracts of land into exclusive preserves for elite use, shaping daily life for peasants who depended on nearby woods for resources. In art restoration, retouching involves adding color only where original paint has been lost, using methods designed to remain distinguishable under close inspection. Conservators often apply reversible pigments so future experts can adjust or remove their work. The goal is to reintegrate damaged areas without disguising the artwork's age, creating a careful balance between preservation and visibility. Charon, Pluto's largest moon, is so big relative to Pluto that the two bodies orbit a shared center of gravity located outside Pluto itself. This arrangement makes them behave like a binary system rather than the typical planet-moon pairing. Their surfaces show contrasting geology, with Pluto's smooth plains and Charon's deep canyons, revealing a complex shared history. Cahokia's woodhenge consisted of large timber circles arranged to align with the sun during solstices and equinoxes. Built by the Mississippian culture near present-day St. Louis, the posts acted like astronomical markers that helped track seasonal cycles. Archaeologists reconstructed several circles using post holes, showing how these wooden observatories complemented the mounds and plazas of the surrounding city. The Czochralski process, developed in 1916, grows single crystals by slowly pulling a seed crystal from a melt. This method produces highly pure silicon and germanium used in semiconductors. As the crystal rises, atoms align into a uniform structure, a bit like drawing taffy while keeping the strands perfectly ordered. The technique remains essential in modern electronics. Bactra, capital of ancient Bactria, was an important center of Zoroastrianism and later became a crossroads of Greek and Buddhist traditions. After Alexander's campaigns, the region blended Hellenistic culture with local beliefs, producing art and inscriptions that reflect both influences. Its monasteries and temples made it a focal point of intellectual exchange across Central Asia's trade routes. The Minoan eruption of Thera in the 2nd millennium BCE was so powerful it reshaped the Aegean landscape. Ash deposits and tsunami evidence suggest that coastal settlements on Crete suffered heavy damage. Its scale has led some scholars to connect the disaster with later legends, such as the story of a vanished island that inspired the tale of Atlantis. Byblos, on the coast of modern Lebanon, is one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities and served as a major port for exporting papyrus. Greek traders associated the city so strongly with writing materials that its name eventually contributed to the word Bible. Excavations reveal temples, inscriptions, and fortifications that trace its long history across millennia. Cumae, the first Greek colony on the Italian mainland, became a cultural gateway between Greece and early Rome. It housed the Cumaean Sibyl, a prophetess whose cave sanctuary is still visible today. Her oracles were consulted by Roman leaders, blending myth and politics. The city's location helped spread Greek language, art, and religion throughout the Italian peninsula. Kerma, capital of an early Nubian kingdom in present-day Sudan, featured monumental mud brick structures including the Western Defufa, a massive temple rising above the city. Excavations show a society with skilled pottery, rich tombs, and long-distance trade ties. Kerma's architecture and burial practices reveal a distinctive culture that interacted with, but remained independent from, ancient Egypt. The city of Nimes in France contains exceptionally preserved Roman monuments, such as a large amphitheater and the Maison Carrée, a nearly intact temple. These buildings show how Roman urban planning spread across the empire, using durable stone and precise geometry. Walking through Nimes today feels much like stepping through a provincial capital from the 1st century. Viroconium, one of the largest Roman settlements in Britain, developed a grand forum bath complex and well-planned streets. Located near modern Wroxeter, it served as an administrative and commercial hub for the surrounding region. Archaeological remains show heated rooms, market spaces, and residences that illustrate how Roman civic life extended far beyond major imperial capitals. Calakmul, deep within the Maya lowlands, was one of the civilization's 2 major superpowers, locked in a centuries-long rivalry with Tikal. Its rulers commissioned towering pyramids and carved stelae recording political alliances and battles. The city's vast size and influence made it a key player in the shifting network of Maya states during the Classic period. Paestum in southern Italy preserves 3 large Greek temples dating from the 6th and 5th centuries BCE. Their limestone columns and carefully proportioned layouts make them some of the best examples of ancient Doric architecture. The surrounding city walls, frescoes, and tombs show how Greek settlers adapted their traditions to a new landscape on the Italian coast. Leptis Magna, in modern Libya, was a major Roman city, whose ruins include an impressive theater, a lavish forum, and long colonnaded streets. The city flourished under Emperor Septimius Severus, who was born there and expanded its public buildings. Today, its well-preserved arches and marketplaces provide a vivid picture of urban life in Rome's African provinces. Dur Sharukin, founded by Sargon II, served as an Assyrian capital decorated with massive stone reliefs and guardian figures shaped as winged bulls. Its palace rooms displayed scenes of military campaigns and royal ceremonies carved into the walls. Although the city was abandoned soon after Sargon's death, its remains reveal the empire's ambition and grand architectural style. Megiddo, a site in modern Israel, consists of 26 layers of ancient cities built atop one another over thousands of years. Its strategic location made it a frequent battleground in antiquity. Because the Book of Revelation refers to a final gathering at Armageddon, a name derived from Megiddo, the site became associated with apocalyptic imagery. Tanis, a northern capital of ancient Egypt, housed tombs of pharaohs from the 21st and 22nd dynasties. Unlike the Valley of the Kings, several of these burial chambers were discovered intact, containing royal masks and treasures. Excavations show that Tanis served as an important political and religious center during periods when power shifted away from southern Egypt. Nimrud, another great Assyrian capital, yielded carved ivories, monumental statues, and palace reliefs depicting military victories and ceremonial scenes. The city's grand halls were lined with stone panels showing kings hunting lions or receiving tribute. These remains highlight the artistic ambition of the Neo-Assyrian Empire and the scale of its royal architecture. Dura Europos, on the Euphrates, was a border city shaped by Hellenistic, Parthian, and Roman influences. Its well-preserved buildings include one of the oldest known synagogues with painted walls, an early Christian house church, and temples dedicated to multiple deities. The city's layered architecture illustrates how diverse communities live together along ancient frontier routes. Sardis, capital of the Lydian kingdom, is credited with producing the first true coins made of refined gold and silver alloys. This innovation standardized value in trade and spread rapidly across the ancient world. Archaeologists have uncovered monumental buildings, shops, and a grand synagogue, showing how Sardis remained a vibrant city through Persian, Greek, and Roman periods. Butrint in Albania was settled by Greeks, developed into a Roman city, and later became a medieval bishopric. Its ruins include a theater, basilicas, baths, and fortifications spanning more than 2,500 years. Set beside a lagoon, the site reflects repeated phases of occupation shaped by shifting empires along the Adriatic coast. Garni in Armenia is known for its striking Greco-Roman temple, a colonnaded structure built in the 1st century that stands out as the only building of its type preserved in the former Soviet Union. Perched above the Azat River Gorge, it mixes classical proportions with local stonework. Its survival through earthquakes and empire changes makes it a rare architectural link to antiquity. Pergamum in modern Turkey flourished during the Hellenistic era as a center of scholarship, with a library said to hold hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Its hillside acropolis featured temples, a theater carved into the slope, and royal palaces. The city's scholars advanced medicine and literature, making Pergamum second only to Alexandria in intellectual reputation. Babylon, capital of the Babylonian Empire, was known for monumental architecture such as the Ishtar Gate, decorated with brilliantly glazed bricks showing lions, dragons, and bulls. These images represented gods like Marduk and symbolized royal power. Visiting ancient travelers described its processional ways and walls as some of the most impressive sights in Mesopotamia. Rome began as a cluster of settlements on 7 hills along the Tiber River and grew into the capital of an empire stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. Its forums, aqueducts, and amphitheaters showcased engineering that shaped urban life for centuries. The city became a cultural crossroads where law, architecture, and language developed into enduring legacies. Athens is often called the cradle of democracy and philosophy, home to thinkers like Socrates and Pericles. The Acropolis, crowned by the Parthenon, reflects the city's devotion to civic life and artistic excellence. Its assembly system, where citizens debated policy, helped create political ideas that echo through modern governments. Jerusalem, continuously inhabited for over 5,000 years, is central to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Its old city contains sites such as the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the Dome of the Rock. Layers of architecture and history reveal how different cultures shaped the same sacred landscape across millennia. Cusco, once capital of the Inca Empire, combines finely fitted stone walls with later Spanish colonial buildings. Its streets follow the layout of the original Inca city, and many foundations still display the precise masonry for which the empire is known. The blend of cultures is visible in landmarks like the Curicancha, where a Spanish church rises atop an Inca temple. Beijing has served as China's capital for most of the past 8 centuries and houses the Forbidden City, a vast palace complex built in the early 15th century. Its courtyards, gates, and halls follow strict imperial design rooted in Confucian order. The city's long political role is reflected in surrounding landmarks such as the Temple of Heaven and the Ming tombs. Kyoto, Japan's imperial capital for more than 1,000 years, is famous for temples, landscaped gardens, and wooden townhouses called michiya. Walking through its historic districts reveals architectural styles preserved since the Heian period. The city's cultural traditions, from tea ceremony to seasonal festivals, reflect its long-standing role as the country's artistic center. Florence, birthplace of the Renaissance, became a showcase of art and architecture through the works of figures like Brunelleschi, Michelangelo, and Botticelli. Its Duomo features a vast dome engineered in the 15th century, while the Uffizi Gallery houses masterpieces spanning centuries. The city's merchant families helped finance a cultural flowering that reshaped Europe. Venice, built on more than 100 small islands in a lagoon, uses canals instead of streets for transportation. Its palaces, churches, and marketplaces rise from wooden piles driven into the mud centuries ago. The Grand Canal winds through a city that became a medieval trading power, known for its glassmaking, shipyards, and distinctive Gothic architecture. St. Petersburg, founded by Peter the Great in 1703, was intended as Russia's window to Europe. Built along the Neva River, it features wide boulevards, Baroque palaces, and later neoclassical designs. For over 2 centuries, it served as the imperial capital, shaping Russian cultural and political life. Prague's Old Town Square, Charles Bridge, and Hilltop Castle reflect a history shaped by Gothic, Baroque, and Renaissance styles. The city's astronomical clock, installed in the 15th century, still draws crowds with its hourly display. Prague grew at the crossroads of Central Europe, blending influences that give it a distinct architectural character. Vienna, once capital of the Habsburg Empire, is known for its imperial palaces such as Schönbrunn and the Hofburg. The city also became a center for classical music, home to composers like Mozart and Beethoven. Its historic coffeehouses functioned as gathering places for writers, musicians, and political thinkers throughout the 19th century. Budapest, often called the Pearl of the Danube, developed from the unification of Buda, Pest, and Obuda. It is known for its thermal baths, some tracing back to Roman and Ottoman times. Neo-Gothic landmarks like the Parliament Building and chain bridges across the river reflect the city's complex architectural heritage. Amsterdam's canals and narrow gabled houses reveal its Golden Age prosperity during the 17th century. Built on soft ground reinforced by wooden piles, the city grew around waterways that served both transport and drainage roles. Its artistic heritage includes the work of Rembrandt and other masters associated with the thriving cultural scene of the Dutch Republic. Andorra la Vella, located high in the Pyrenees, is the highest capital city in Europe. Its steep valleys and surrounding peaks shaped a history tied to mountain trade routes. The city's old stone buildings and narrow lanes reflect a blend of Catalan and French influences in a small but strategically placed principality. The Turing test, proposed by Alan Turing in 1950, evaluates whether a machine can exhibit behavior indistinguishable from that of a human in conversation. The test involves a human judge interacting with both a person and a computer through text. If the judge cannot reliably tell which is which, the machine is said to have passed. The Kingdom of Aksum, located in parts of modern Ethiopia and Eritrea, controlled trade routes linking the Roman world with Arabia and India. Its ports and coinage show a wealthy maritime power, while its stelae fields contain towering stone monuments. Aksum adopted Christianity in the 4th century, shaping religious traditions that continue in the region. Polo originated in ancient Persia as a cavalry training exercise for elite troops such as the King's Guard. The game required coordination, horsemanship, and quick maneuvering across the field. Over time, it evolved into a competitive sport enjoyed by nobility across Asia, eventually spreading to other continents through cultural exchange. Voss, a style within Norwegian folk music, is marked by asymmetrical rhythms and intricate ornamentation that give it a distinctive sound. Played on instruments like the Hardanger fiddle, it reflects regional tradition shaped by local dance forms. Its uneven beats create patterns that feel both structured and spontaneous. Brocard's problem asks for integer values of n such that n factorial plus 1 forms a perfect square. Only 3 small solutions are known: n equals 4, 5, and 7, but no one has proved whether more exist. The problem sits at the intersection of number theory and combinatorics, teasing mathematicians with its mix of simplicity and difficulty. The Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI, measures the relative explosive strength of eruptions using factors such as plume height and volume of material ejected. The scale is logarithmic, meaning each step represents a 10-fold increase in eruptive power. It helps volcanologists compare events from small strombolian bursts to massive eruptions like Krakatoa. Plate tectonics explains how Earth's outer shell is divided into several rigid plates that move slowly over the mantle. Their interactions form mountains, trigger earthquakes, and create ocean basins. Evidence comes from matching fossils across continents, magnetic patterns on the seafloor, and GPS measurements, all showing that the planet's surface is in constant motion. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male, but the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. Like the clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite, born male. But the most dominant male will. The clownfish is a sequential hermaphrodite. But the most dominant male will change sex to female if the breeding female of the group dies. Continental drift describes how Earth's continents slowly shift positions over millions of years, moving like giant rafts on the planet's surface. The idea, proposed by Alfred Wegener in 1912, was first supported by matching fossils and coastlines across oceans. Today we understand that plate tectonics drives this motion, helping continents migrate, collide, and reshape Earth's geography. Subduction occurs at convergent plate boundaries, where one tectonic plate bends and slides beneath another into the mantle. It's a slow but powerful process that recycles oceanic crust and fuels volcanic arcs, such as those around the Pacific. Watching diagrams of subduction can feel like seeing a conveyor belt disappear beneath the surface, carrying rock deep into Earth's interior. Seafloor spreading takes place at divergent boundaries like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where molten material rises and cools to form new oceanic crust. As the crust moves outward from the ridge, it widens the ocean basin in a steady, measurable process. Magnetic patterns on the seafloor act almost like tape recordings, capturing reversals in Earth's magnetic field as the crust forms. The epicenter of an earthquake is the point directly above the hypocenter, where the rupture actually begins underground. Seismologists plot waves from multiple stations to pinpoint this surface location. It helps emergency responders understand which areas likely felt the strongest shaking, since nearby regions receive the most intense energy release. P waves, or primary waves, travel as compressional pulses that move through rock by pushing and pulling, similar to how a slinky stretches and compresses. They're the fastest seismic waves and the first to reach seismic stations. Because they can pass through solids, liquids, and gases, they provide valuable clues about the layers deep within Earth. S waves, or secondary waves, move more slowly and travel by shearing the ground side to side, much like shaking a rope. They can't pass through liquids, a fact that helped scientists determine that Earth's outer core is molten. When seismic stations detect P waves but no S waves from certain regions, it reveals how materials inside Earth affect wave paths. Liquefaction occurs when water-saturated soil loses its strength during strong shaking and behaves temporarily like a liquid. Buildings may tilt or sink as the ground shifts beneath them, similar to objects settling in a stirred-up sandbox. The phenomenon often appears in river valleys and coastal plains where loose sediments and groundwater are common. A geyser is a type of hot spring that periodically ejects boiling water and steam in dramatic bursts. Pressure builds as groundwater heats in underground chambers until it escapes upward in a turbulent column. These eruptions can be regular serum or unpredictable, depending on how the plumbing system beneath the geyser channels heat and water. Old Faithful, located in Yellowstone National Park, is a cone geyser known for its remarkably consistent eruptions. Its intervals vary slightly, but the geyser generally sends a tall jet of hot water skyward at predictable times. This reliability comes from a relatively stable network of underground vents that regulate pressure and heat. A fumarole is an opening near volcanic areas where steam and gases escape from Earth's crust. The emissions often contain sulfur compounds that leave yellow deposits around the vent. These features can mark places where magma lies relatively close to the surface, heating groundwater and releasing gases through fractures in the rock. A sinkhole, sometimes called a cenote, forms when soluble rock like limestone dissolves, creating underground voids that eventually collapse. This process, known as karst activity, can produce sudden depressions or deep water-filled basins. Regions with extensive limestone bedrock often display landscapes dotted with sinkholes of varying sizes. An alluvial fan forms when sediment-laden water flows out of a narrow canyon and spreads across a flatter plain, depositing sand and gravel in a fan-shaped pattern. These features are common in arid regions where flash floods transport large amounts of material. Over time, the deposits build broad, sloping surfaces that mark changes in stream velocity. An oxbow lake develops when a river meander becomes cut off from the main channel, leaving behind a U-shaped body of water. This usually happens during floods when the river takes a shorter path and abandons its former loop. The resulting lake slowly fills with sediment, but often remains a distinct feature for decades or centuries. A meander is one of the sinuous curves in a winding river channel, created as flowing water erodes the outer bank and deposits sediment along the inner bank. These bends migrate over time, giving rivers their characteristic looping patterns. In flat landscapes, meanders can become quite exaggerated, creating wide arcs across floodplains. A fjord is a long, narrow inlet with steep cliffs on either side, formed when a glacier carves a deep valley that later floods with seawater. These landscapes appear in places like Norway and New Zealand, where ancient ice sheets shaped the terrain. The depth and straightness of fjords reflect the powerful grinding action of glacial ice. A moraine is a ridge or mound of till, unsorted sediment, left behind by a retreating glacier. As the ice moves, it pushes or drops debris that accumulates at the sides, front, or bottom of the glacier. These features mark former ice positions, acting like footprints that show where glaciers once advanced and receded. An erratic is a large boulder transported by glacial ice and deposited far from its original source rock. Because the boulder's composition often differs from local geology, it stands out like a misplaced puzzle piece. These transported rocks help scientists trace the paths of ancient glaciers across continents. A drumlin is a streamlined hill made of glacial sediments, shaped like an elongated teardrop pointing in the direction of ice flow. Drumlins often appear in clusters, creating rolling landscapes. Their form suggests how ice moved across the land, smoothing some material while piling up other areas in gentle slopes. An esker is a long, winding ridge of sand and gravel, deposited by meltwater streams running beneath a glacier. As the glacier retreats, the sediment remains as a twisting embankment. Eskers can stretch for kilometers and often serve as natural, elevated pathways across otherwise uneven terrain. A kettle forms when a block of ice breaks off a glacier, becomes buried in sediment, and later melts, leaving a depression that may fill with water. These basins appear in glaciated regions and can create clusters of small ponds. Their irregular shapes reflect the random way ice chunks detach during glacial retreat. The Anthropocene is a proposed geological epoch marking the period when human activities began significantly shaping Earth's systems. Indicators include industrial emissions, plastic pollution, and changes in sediment layers. While not formally adopted, the concept highlights how human influence now rivals natural forces in altering climate and ecosystems. Petrified wood forms when minerals replace organic material in buried tree trunks through a process called permineralization. Over millions of years, silica or other minerals fill the cellular spaces while preserving the tree's original structure. The result is a stone replica of the wood, complete with growth rings visible in cross sections. A coprolite is fossilized feces that provides direct evidence of ancient diets. By examining these remains, paleontologists learn what prehistoric animals ate and how they processed food. Coprolites can contain plant fragments, bone pieces, or even traces of parasites, offering surprisingly detailed snapshots of ancient ecosystems. A gastrolith is a smooth stone swallowed by an animal, often a dinosaur or aquatic reptile, to help grind food in the digestive tract. These gizzard stones appear polished from repeated use. When found with fossils, they offer clues about feeding habits, much like discovering utensils alongside archaeological remains. Mosasaurus was a large marine reptile related to snakes and monitor lizards that lived during the late Cretaceous. Its long body, paddle-like limbs, and powerful jaws made it a dominant predator in ancient seas. Fossils from Europe and North America show multiple species, some reaching lengths comparable to modern whales. A trilobite was an extinct marine arthropod that thrived for about 270 million years, leaving abundant fossils in Paleozoic rocks. Their segmented bodies and diverse forms reflect how adaptable they were in ancient oceans. Because they evolved rapidly, trilobites helped geologists date rock layers across different regions. An ammonite was an extinct marine mollusk with a coiled shell divided by intricate suture patterns. These lines vary between species and help scientists identify and date fossils. Ammonites lived alongside dinosaurs and became widespread, making their shells useful markers for correlating rock layers around the world. An echidna, also called a spiny anteater, is one of the only surviving monotremes, the small group of egg-laying mammals. Its snout detects electrical signals from insects, and its body is covered with protective spines. Echidna share this unusual reproductive trait with the platypus, highlighting an ancient lineage within the mammal family tree. Placentals are mammals that nourish developing young through a placenta during gestation, a system that supports longer developmental periods. This group includes humans, whales, rodents, and many others. Their widespread success across ecosystems reflects how the placenta allows offspring to be born at more advanced stages of growth. A hermaphrodite is an organism that has reproductive organs associated with both male and female sexes, either fully or partially. Many plants, invertebrates, and some fish use this strategy for flexible reproduction. In nature, it can ensure that mating opportunities remain available even when potential partners are scarce. Luciferin is a chemical compound that produces light when it reacts with the enzyme luciferase and oxygen, a process that powers the glow of fireflies and some deep-sea organisms. The reaction releases energy as photons instead of heat, making it one of nature's cleanest light sources. Different species use slightly different luciferins, which is why bioluminescent colors can vary from green to blue. Chemosynthesis is the process by which certain organisms, especially bacteria living near hydrothermal vents, create food using chemical energy rather than sunlight. Instead of relying on photosynthesis, they oxidize compounds like hydrogen sulfide rising from the seafloor. These microbes form the base of entire ecosystems, supporting tube worms and other animals in environments completely dark to the human eye. Hydrothermal vents are fissures on the ocean floor that release superheated, mineral-rich water heated by underlying magma. When this fluid mixes with cold seawater, it forms towering chimneys made of metal sulfides. Despite the extreme temperatures and pressures, diverse life thrives around these vents, using chemical energy instead of sunlight. Echolocation is the ability to navigate by emitting sound waves and interpreting the echoes that bounce back from objects. Bats and dolphins use this method to pinpoint prey or obstacles, almost like running a natural sonar system. By analyzing the timing and pitch changes in returning echoes, they create a detailed mental map of their surroundings. Magnetoception allows animals such as migratory birds and sea turtles to sense Earth's magnetic field and orient themselves for long-distance travel. Researchers think this ability may involve specialized proteins or particles of magnetic minerals inside their tissues. It works like a built-in compass, helping animals return to specific nesting or feeding grounds. Jacobson's organ, or the vomeronasal organ, is an auxiliary sense structure found in many animals that helps detect chemical cues. Snakes use it by flicking their tongues to collect molecules from the air, then pressing them against the organ to taste their surroundings. This system helps them track prey or potential mates with surprising precision. Mimesis is a form of crypsis in which an animal imitates a specific object in its environment, such as a stick insect resembling a twig. This detailed mimicry reduces the chance of detection by predators. The adaptation showcases how evolution can refine camouflage until the animal looks almost indistinguishable from the background. Aposematism is warning coloration used by animals like poison dart frogs to advertise their toxicity or unpleasant taste. Bright colors and bold patterns act as visual signals to predators that attacking would be a bad idea. Over time, predators learn to associate these cues with danger, making the signals highly effective. Mycorrhiza refers to the mutualistic relationship between a fungus and a plant root, where each partner exchanges nutrients. The fungus extends the plant's reach into the soil while receiving sugars created by photosynthesis. This partnership improves water and mineral uptake and is so widespread that most terrestrial plants depend on it for healthy growth. Lichen is a mutualistic composite organism formed when algae or cyanobacteria live among the filaments of fungi. The algae provide photosynthetic energy, while the fungi offer structure and protection. Together, they colonize harsh environments such as bare rock, slowly breaking down surfaces and paving the way for other species. The binturong, also called a bearcat, is a civet native to Southeast Asia, known for producing a scent remarkably similar to popcorn. The aroma comes from a chemical in its urine also found in heated corn products. Its long tail and arboreal habits let it maneuver through forest canopies in search of fruit. The 1940 collapse of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge resulted from aeroelastic flutter, where steady winds caused oscillations that matched the bridge's natural frequency. As the vibrations intensified, the deck twisted violently until it failed. Footage of the collapse remains a classic case study in engineering design and wind dynamics. Under the Code of Hammurabi, builders were held personally responsible for the safety of structures they constructed. If a house collapsed and killed the owner, the builder was executed. If it killed the owner's son, the builder's son suffered the same fate. These laws aim to enforce accountability in a society with limited technical oversight. The Beale ciphers are 3 19th-century encrypted texts that supposedly reveal the location of a buried treasure in Virginia. Only the second cipher, describing the treasure's contents, has been solved using the Declaration of Independence as a key. The remaining 2 unsolved ciphers continue to draw cryptographers and treasure hunters. The Spoon of Llewellyn, Cherig Bead, is a Celtic iron artifact discovered in Wales, notable for its bowl being divided into 2 halves by a raised central rib. The design suggests ceremonial rather than practical use, and it was found among a large deposit of offerings. Its craftsmanship highlights Iron Age metalworking skill. Thorne-Zhitkov objects are hypothetical stars, formed when a neutron star sinks into the core of a red giant or supergiant. This unusual configuration would create unique nuclear reactions, not seen in ordinary stars. Astronomers search for chemical signatures that might reveal one of these rare and exotic objects. The Jacquard loom, perfected in 1804, used punched cards to control complex weaving patterns automatically. Each card represented a row of design, allowing weavers to produce intricate textiles with consistency. This system, inspired early computing pioneers who adapted the idea of coded instructions for mechanical calculation. Spheroidal weathering is a chemical process that rounds blocky rocks, such as granite, into smooth, onion-like layers. Water seeps into fractures, breaking down minerals and causing corners and edges to erode faster. Over long periods, this creates rounded boulders that look sculpted despite forming through natural decay. In medieval England, the murder fine required a community to pay a heavy penalty if a Norman was found dead and the killer wasn't identified. The rule aimed to protect the ruling Norman minority after the conquest of 1066. Communities had strong incentives to investigate deaths thoroughly to avoid the collective punishment. The Kula ring is a ceremonial exchange system practiced in the Trobriand Islands, where shell necklaces and armbands travel between islands in opposite directions. Participants undertake long voyages to trade these prestige items, strengthening alliances and social relationships. The exchange emphasizes reciprocity rather than material value. Aerographene is an ultralight synthetic foam so low in density that it's 7 times lighter than air. Its delicate carbon structure is strong enough that a single flower petal can support it. Materials like this help researchers explore applications in insulation, filtration, and lightweight engineering. Project Azorian was a secret 1974 CIA mission to raise the sunken Soviet submarine K-129 from the Pacific seafloor. Using the specially built ship Glomar Explorer, the operation attempted to recover codebooks and technology. Only part of the submarine was successfully lifted, but the mission remained classified for years. Woolly mammoths possessed a unique form of hemoglobin that functioned like antifreeze, allowing oxygen release to tissues even in freezing temperatures. This adaptation helped them survive in Ice Age environments where cold could hinder normal blood chemistry. Studies of preserved DNA reveal how their physiology differed from modern elephants. Yabusame is a Japanese-mounted archery ritual in which a rider gallops past 3 wooden targets and shoots each with a single arrow. Dating back to the 12th century, the practice was meant to cultivate discipline and focus among samurai. Today, it survives as a ceremonial sport performed at Shinto festivals. The Corpus Juris Civilis, ordered by Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century, compiled and reorganized centuries of Roman law into a coherent system. It included statutes, legal commentary, and case interpretations. This codification later shaped civil law traditions across Europe, influencing legal frameworks still used today. The Isenheim altarpiece, created for a hospital monastery treating skin diseases, portrays a crucifixion scene with strikingly realistic wounds. Though unsettling, the imagery was meant to offer comfort by showing a suffering figure who shared the patient's pain. The altarpiece also includes vivid resurrection panels symbolizing healing. Isoglosses are boundary lines on linguistic maps indicating where specific dialect features occur, such as a unique pronunciation or vocabulary word. When several isoglosses cluster together, they can outline distinct dialect regions. Linguists use these patterns to trace how languages evolve and spread across geographic areas. Aqua regia, a mixture of hydrochloric and nitric acids, is powerful enough to dissolve gold and platinum. Each acid plays a role. One oxidizes the metal, while the other forms soluble complexes. The mixture has been used in refining, laboratory work, and even historically to hide precious metals from confiscation. The ondes Martineau, invented in 1928, produces an eerie, wavering tone by sliding a ring along a wire to control pitch. Its expressive sound made it popular with early 20th century composers exploring electronic music. The instrument blends keyboard and theremin-like elements, allowing for vibrato and gliding notes. The Millau Viaduct in France is the world's tallest bridge, with its highest mast rising even taller than the Eiffel Tower. Engineers assembled its roadway on the plateaus beside the Tarn Valley and then slid the entire deck into position across the piers. The structure's sweeping span and elegant masts make it a landmark of modern bridge design. The Anlushan Rebellion, which erupted in 755, devastated the Tang dynasty and may have caused tens of millions of deaths through warfare, famine, and disease. Stretching nearly 8 years, the conflict began when the general An Lushan revolted and captured major cities. Its toll reshaped China's demographics and weakened a dynasty once considered at its peak. The Kondratiev wave is an economic theory proposing that capitalist economies experience long cycles of expansion and contraction lasting roughly 40 to 60 years. Identified by Nikolai Kondratiev in the 1920s, the idea draws from patterns in prices, wages, and technological innovation. Whether fully accepted or not, the concept frames economic history as a series of repeating long-term rhythms. The Dead Sea Scrolls include the oldest surviving copies of many Hebrew Bible texts, as well as writings from a Jewish sect living near Qumran. Discovered between 1947 and 1956, the scrolls preserved biblical material on parchment and papyrus. Their language and variations offer insight into religious life and textual traditions during the Second Temple period. Thomas Edison's electric pen, introduced in 1876, used a small motor to rapidly puncture stencils for document duplication. The vibrating mechanism later inspired tattoo machine designs, which adapted the same motion for inked needles. Though short-lived as an office tool, the electric pen represents an early experiment in mechanized marking. Flexagons are paper models that fold in such a way that hidden faces appear when flexed, making them part puzzle and part geometric curiosity. First explored by students at Princeton in the 1930s, they reveal surprising patterns through simple movements. Their shifting forms show how paper can encode complex symmetrical relationships. The War of the Oaken Bucket in 1325 was a skirmish between Modena and Bologna, two rival Italian city-states. Legend says the conflict started after Modenese soldiers stole a wooden bucket from a Bolognese well. Though the real causes were political, the story endures as an example of how symbolic objects can become tied to civic pride. Cratyllic naming refers to choosing a name that reflects a sound or attribute of the thing being named, as in the bird called the chickadee. Unlike pure onomatopoeia, this approach treats the sound as meaningful identification rather than imitation. Philosophers as far back as Plato discussed whether names should correspond naturally to their objects. The 1986 Challenger disaster occurred when an O-ring in a solid rocket booster failed after cold weather reduced its elasticity. Hot gases escaped through the compromised seal during liftoff, leading to the shuttle's breakup. The incident prompted major changes in NASA's safety culture and engineering review processes. The Edict of Nantes, issued in 1598 by Henry IV of France, granted legal rights and limited protections to Calvinist Protestants. It allowed them to worship in designated areas and hold certain offices, while France remained officially Catholic. The edict eased decades of religious conflict, though it was later revoked in the 17th century. The Great Vowel Shift was a centuries-long transformation from the 15th to the 18th century that changed how English long vowels were pronounced. Vowel sounds rose higher in the mouth or shifted entirely, altering words like bite and meat. This change helps explain why English spelling often fails to match modern pronunciation. Toki Pona is a minimalist constructed language created in 2001 that uses about 120 root words to express broad concepts. Speakers combine simple terms to produce nuanced meanings, emphasizing clarity and positivity. Its compact vocabulary makes it a linguistic experiment in reducing language to essential elements. Stuxnet, discovered in 2010, was a sophisticated computer worm designed to target and damage industrial control systems. It famously disrupted Iranian uranium enrichment centrifuges by causing mechanical failure while reporting normal readings. Its precision marked a new era in cyber warfare, where software could produce physical effects. A perfect number is a positive integer, equal to the sum of its proper divisors. For instance, 6 equals 1 plus 2 plus 3. Mathematicians studied these numbers since antiquity and found links between perfect numbers and certain prime-generated sequences, revealing deep patterns in number theory. The Turing mechanism explains how natural patterns, such as stripes on animals or spots on fish, can arise from initially uniform chemical distributions. Alan Turing proposed that interacting chemicals diffusing at different rates create self-organizing patterns. The idea inspired research in developmental biology and mathematical modeling. The Popol Vuh is a central creation narrative of the Quiché Maya, recounting the formation of the world, the first humans, and the adventures of the hero twins Hunahpu and Xbalanque. The text was transcribed in the 16th century from an older oral tradition. Its poetic style reveals the Maya worldview through myth and cosmology. Orichalcum is a metal described by ancient authors, including Plato, as a valuable alloy used in Atlantis. While its exact nature is uncertain, some scholars associate it with bronze-like materials found in Mediterranean contexts. The blend of legend and archaeology keeps the term tied to both myth and ancient metallurgy. A nidstang, or scorn pole, was a Norse ritual object used to direct curses toward an enemy. Typically, a horse's head was mounted atop a pole with carved runes naming the target. Set in the ground facing the offender's land, the pole symbolized a public declaration of hostility and ill fortune. The Wrocław dwarfs are small bronze statues scattered throughout Wrocław, Poland, originating from the Orange Alternative protest movement of the 1980s. The movement used whimsical dwarf imagery to challenge government censorship. Today, over 300 figurines decorate the city, turning satire into a playful urban tradition. The Solovetsky stone in Moscow is a boulder transported from the Solovetsky Islands, where the first Soviet gulag operated. Installed as a memorial in 1990, it honors victims of political repression. Its simple form contrasts with the heavy historical weight attached to the site it represents. In food science, retrogradation describes how starch molecules in cooked foods like bread reorganize and form crystals as they cool, leading to stalling. The process changes texture by expelling water and tightening the structure of the starch. Warming the food temporarily reverses these changes, though the effect returns as it cools again. The Battle of Karansebes in 1788 involved Austrian soldiers mistakenly fighting among themselves during a night of confusion and intoxication. Miscommunication escalated into panic, and different units fired on one another. The incident left thousands dead and remains a cautionary tale about chaos in military operations. Nematomorpha, or horsehair worms, are parasites that chemically influence their cricket or grasshopper hosts to seek water. Once the host enters a pool or stream, the adult worm emerges to continue its life cycle. This dramatic behavioral manipulation illustrates the complex strategies parasites use to survive. Sky burial is a Tibetan funerary practice in which a body is placed on a mountaintop and offered to vultures. The ritual reflects beliefs about impermanence and the natural return of physical matter to the environment. Specialist practitioners prepare the body so scavenging birds can complete the final stage. The Pillars of Hercules referred to the promontories on either side of the Strait of Gibraltar, marking the boundary of the known world in ancient Greek geography. Gibraltar and Jebel Musa stood as symbolic gateways between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. Sailors associated them with the farthest limits of exploration. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE saw major societies in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean, including the Hittites and Mycenaeans, fall into decline. Archaeological evidence shows destroyed cities, disrupted trade, and widespread migration. Scholars debate the causes from climate shifts to warfare, making it a complex historical turning point. Sprezzatura is an Italian term from the Book of the Courtier, describing the art of appearing effortlessly graceful. It means performing difficult tasks or cultivating style without showing strain. The idea influenced Renaissance views of elegance, shaping expectations for aristocratic behavior. The mocha is a traditional exchange system in Papua New Guinea in which influential big men gain prestige by giving away large gifts, especially pigs. The cycle encourages ever larger offerings as each recipient seeks to outdo the previous giver. Rather than accumulating wealth, participants build status through generosity. And there you have it, A whole lineup of facts straight from history, science, and a few corners of the internet that probably shouldn't exist. Which one blew your mind the most? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more brain fuel. I'm the useless guy, your fact finder, your voice of chaos, and I'm out. Time to give my brain a reboot.